dedicated to empowering you with information
to make positive choices
and be advocates for your overall well-being.
Welcome to The Health View. Welcome to The Health View. I'm Yvonne Dunitz. I'm delighted today to have as my guest Justin Cates, who's the head and the director of the City of Nashua's Emergency Preparedness. And as you know, The Health View always focuses on information that will help you with your health and your well-being. And being prepared in an emergency is critical so that you do not react to a situation, but you calmly respond. And Justin, I think that the best way for us to start is weather-related emergencies.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly we just came from hurricane season, just recently ended. And that's certainly a concern for folks that are, along the East Coast and certainly along any of the South Coast of the United States. Here in New Hampshire, we can experience hurricanes, but thankfully at the end of November, that season goes away, and now we have to start focusing on winter. And you remember last winter, right?
Yes, and I think we learned a lot from it, right, based upon that? What did the city go through that you've learned from related to that?
Well, so certainly with winter operations, the city has gotten involved in planning more regularly for the kinds of response that we would deal with for one of those extreme types of winters that we saw last one. From last winter, you probably remember that it seemed like every weekend we were getting another storm.
Yes,
and
nowhere to put the snow after a while.
We ran out of places to put the snow early on, our typical locations.
Sure.
But through good planning and coordination with all of our city departments, we were able to find additional locations that we could store snow until it started to melt in the spring season.
And it was an amazing collaboration that you had, and I wish to take a moment to thank you and your staff and all of the city people as well as community people that helped you to get through that particular season. That really was historical for the city of Nashua, was it not, related to all of the snow that we received?
It was historical,
yes.
And you bring up a good point about not only thanking the city staff, but also the community members, because they really played a big part as well, and they can certainly do a lot of things to help us this winter coming around.
And what was it that they did last year that was helpful for you that you would like to see more people do? And based upon what you learned, how else can they get involved?
So some of the things that we can ask citizens to do is a way to help the entire city response to a snowstorm is, number one, we want to make sure that those fire hydrants are cleared. And our fire department spends a lot of time during the winter season, especially after a snowstorm, clearing fire hydrants. And you'll see the trucks out in the community, and certainly all the members are out there shoveling the snow away to try and clear the hydrants. But what you can do as a good citizen is to go out and clear that before they show up. And it doesn't really take much work. For the most part, it's really just getting out there and clearing. I like to recommend 2 to 3 feet around all sides of the hydrant. So that way they can get good access in if they need to get a supply line for one of the engines.
And how about putting one of those reflective sticks that you have so you know where it is?
Absolutely. And so some of the hydrants you will see that they've had those installed already. But if you have one on your property that doesn't have something that makes it stand out higher than our typical snowbanks after a plow drives by, try and put something out there reflective so that they know where to go. Our mapping department here in the city has done a really good job of plotting where all of our hydrants are, but you can imagine that after a snowstorm, it's probably very difficult in those snowbanks to find these things after they've been covered.
Very, very true. So that covers the water in case of a fire, an emergency, but one of the things that happens during the winter, there may be some emergencies where people on the inside of the house have to immediately shut down their water, as well as there are areas outside where the water is reachable for the city employees. Now, we've spoken about that, and what can people do in order to help the city know where those lines are outside in case there is a need to shut down the water?
Yeah, so one of the things that we had talked with Pennachuck Water about was, what are the response protocols if they needed to shut the water off from the street, or what we call the curb?
Sure.
One of the things that they do on a regular basis is go out there and adjust and basically practice the use of those valves.
Good kind of exercise to make sure that they'll easily shut off in case, not be stiff.
And a lot of times what they will do is they will conduct that same operation as they're going out and flushing water hydrants and things like that throughout the year. So citizens won't have to do much for that. However, there are things when the snow falls on the outside of the home that are really important to keep clear, including those vents,
The
dryer
laundry,
vents.
yeah.
You really want to make sure that you provide access for all of that to get out and not be contained within the home.
Of course, and then for those that have gas that comes in, but in the city of Nashua, everything is provided. But if listeners outside of the greater Nashua area or in the greater Nashua area, if you have wells or if you have gas areas or propane areas, it's important to keep those easily accessible for people to be able to refill your tanks or get in if they need to.
Absolutely.
Now, from the home environment, also, it's really important for people to know how to turn off their water. So now's the time, if you haven't done so already, to label that within your basements.
Absolutely.
Wherever it is, label it to know what to do to have that automatic shut off.
Well, one of the things that we typically hear when we go out and do outreach events is, oh, well, I know where my water shut off is. But really, when it comes down to it, do all the members in your family know? What if the person that does know is away for the day or something like that? And that's when you have that major leak in your home.
Exactly.
So it's important to
know.
label it.
Absolutely. And of course, in case of an emergency, we always we encourage people to have a family plan as far as if they needed, if there was fire and they needed to meet outside, have that place to meet and make sure you go over those
Certainly.
directions. But I'm sure our viewers are looking at what we have ahead of us, but this is a perfect time for you to talk about the emergency plan.
Yeah, one of the things that we do have available for
Let's show
our
this to-
for our city members is our My Emergency Plan document, and this document really is meant to bring a family from the beginning to the end when it comes to putting together a family emergency plan.
Excellent.
And that includes everything from how are you going to communicate during an emergency.
Right.
It talks a little bit about where you would meet if there was a fire in the home,
Okay.
if there was something that was going on within the neighborhood, and also if you needed to evacuate to a much further location. So this serves as kind of that step-by-step guide on how to put together an emergency plan, and then you want to make sure that you share it with all the family members.
Now, how can people get this?
So there's a couple ways.
Okay.
The first way is you can pick it up at the mayor's office at 229 Main Street,
Second floor.
second floor at City Hall. And the other way that you can get it is call us up at Emergency Management at the city.
At what number?
It's 603-589-3260. And just ask, hey, I'd like to have a couple of these guides, or they might have a church organization, a club or something. We can bring a whole stack of them for you. And basically, you can hand them out to whoever you'd like.
Now, Justin, businesses should also have an emergency plan.
Absolutely.
Would they be utilizing this also?
They can use that for their employees, but we also have a step-by-step guide for how businesses and nonprofit organizations can put together an emergency plan as well.
Wonderful. And how can they get that?
Same thing. They can contact us up at the Emergency Management Office. And we can actually come out and provide technical assistance for businesses that are interested by essentially assessing their business plan that currently exists and then identifying the gaps that we might want to improve upon for future emergencies.
That's excellent. This is a wonderful resource. Thank you for putting it
Absolutely.
together for our city. So now our viewers can see we have a number of things here that
We brought everything
Which
today.
is great. I'm glad that you did. Related to emergencies within the home and having kind of an emergency preparedness kit that you always have in your home available to you in case of an emergency. So why don't we start with, I know you have a number of bags here, as far as protection is concerned.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look about the things that you would recommend for protection.
So protection, when we're thinking about personal protective equipment, are things that are going to protect our bodies from whatever the disaster is. And so
Okay.
that ranges everything from protection for your lungs and airways. That could contain N95 respirators. It
So
could,
that would be in case of chemical exposure?
or
What's the
even
difference?
some sort of a solid contaminant. A lot of
Okay.
times when you think about it, people that are painting or sanding or something like that will use this, and it's to protect from those solid particles from getting down into their airway.
What if it was a health exposure?
Same thing. You
You'd
can
use the same one.
You can use an N95 mask, or even go to a higher level of protection through an air purifying respirator, any sort of device that is protecting your airway and keeping the contaminants out. This is what we recommend, that we try and keep things simple. An N95 mask will typically handle the majority of the contaminants that we expect people might fall in line
And where
with.
might we get this?
You can find them at any retailer. You can certainly purchase them online. And pretty much any location that provides tools, hardware, those kinds of things, you'll easily find that kind of stuff.
Excellent. So let's go on in your goodie bag there.
So some of the other things hearing protection. You may be during a disaster operating, chainsaw, something that's
Yes,
loud.
loud.
You still want to make sure that you have hearing protection. So, certainly that's an option.
Okay.
You think about at night,
Night vision,
street lights, things like that are not going to be working.
So this is the vest.
Absolutely, having some sort of a reflective
Right,
vest,
reflective
it helps
vest.
to identify you if you're out on the street.
Yes.
And then also, make sure that people can see you as they're operating equipment and things like that.
Okay. What else?
Eye protection. So this is something that's critical, especially if you are out doing some sort of work, chainsawing, things like that. You want to make sure you protect your eyes.
Okay.
And this is one of those things where a lot of times they say, "Oh, well, I don't need that. It's a disaster. It's going to be dangerous anyway." But no, take any precaution you can to protect your eyes, your hearing, your airways, anything.
Even instead, when people are mowing their lawns or snow blowing or whatever else, they should be wearing these things,
Absolutely.
shouldn't
You
they?
see some of the things that
They
people
fly
run
up.
over with their
Yeah,
snow blowers.
and it wouldn't hurt them with the noises of those machines to be able
Absolutely.
to have this too, just to protect their ears so that they don't start losing their hearing.
Absolutely. So some of the other things that we recommend. So this is a neat idea. This is what we call a kind of a heat sheet. So this is a kind of a shelter that you can use to essentially during a really cold event. This would be great for a car.
Okay.
This will keep you warm. And
Keep
you can
you
see how
warm.
compact it is.
It really is. It's tiny, and if it's large enough for two people. Mm-hmm. Wow, this is called a large grand. And it also shows that you could cover yourself in it or
That's
cover
right.
something if
That's
need
right.
be. Excellent. What else?
So certainly, if you don't have the need for goggles, it's just kind of a smaller level of protection. Safety glasses, certainly
Okay.
an option as well.
And again, any home goods store or things like
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
would have these easily accessible.
Absolutely.
What else do we have?
Another option for
Earplugs.
hearing protection is earplugs. If you don't have the large ear muffs,
Yeah.
certainly this is an option as well. Some additional versions of your N95 mask are in here.
Okay.
And then we talked about respirators. So respirators are that. We talked about N95 is kind of the dust mask style.
Right.
Then you can certainly go even further with an actual respirator if that was the type of protection that you were interested in. I typically don't recommend it because in many cases people aren't aware of what they're buying anyway. They see it on TV and they say, "Oh, I need to have that."
Right.
As I mentioned, N95 masks are great and they do provide protection for the majority of the types of things that we're talking about.
So that would be a priority on item if you're
Absolutely.
needing to focus in this
Absolutely.
here.
Same thing. It's a different type of respirator.
Just a different type of respirator.
And once again, it's one of those things where you have to really know what you're buying in order for it to be useful to you during an
And so
emergency.
how would you know? Would you need to ask somebody like a doctor related to that if in fact you might need
I typically
respiratory?
recommend, one of the things that's a great idea is to go on FEMA's website, FEMA.gov, and they
Okay.
have great resources when it comes to the types of items that should be in your emergency supply kit.
Okay.
And they also talk about respirators and the types of levels of protection that can be provided for each.
And what's great about this is you've labeled in like a plastic bag
Absolutely.
each of the different areas as we go through. And we don't want to forget this emergency poncho.
Yeah, it does rain in some cases. You don't want to have wet
Right.
clothing if it's in the middle of a rain situation.
And you need to get out of the house and do whatever.
Absolutely. So this is another compact thing you can throw in your go bag if you needed it.
Okay.
Highly recommended. Now you brought up a good point about the bags, and the reason we put those into the large bags is, the viewers won't have seen my entire kit when it was all in the same box.
Right.
If we throw all this stuff into that box
Right.
and we need one item,
Right.
it's probably going to be tough for us to find it. So we always tell folks, put them into functional bags.
Right.
Label what the bag is, and that way at least I know that item's in the kitchen bag, or I know it's in the tools and supplies bag, etc. So, definitely all ways that make it easier for you to find those critical items that you need.
Let's jump right into the tools and supplies because I would think
Perfect.
this is an important component for us to be able to do here. So let's.
It definitely is, and so there's a number of items. First of all, we show
Look at that.
we've got a little connection here.
All right. I didn't know if
So one of the things is a battery-powered radio, and so this
Okay.
is a crank style, has a flashlight,
All right.
AM/FM. And AM/FM radios are useful during an emergency because they are likely to be locations that you can get information from your local authorities, just getting news about whatever the emergency is. So certainly that is a great option. And there are a number of different types that you can go out and get. Here's one example. You brought a really neat one, I think. I think I liked yours
Red
better.
Cross.
Yeah, you got yours from the Red Cross, and
Yes.
yours actually has a number of different components to it that make it even more functional, including AM/FM radio, but also NOAA weather radio.
Exactly.
And NOAA weather radio, the concept behind NOAA weather radio is it's essentially stays quiet, doesn't make any noise.
Right.
And as long as this device is operating, it's listening to the NOAA weather radio station.
Right.
When the National Weather Service puts out an official emergency alert,
It automatically
comes on and it will
does.
tell you what the emergency is.
Exactly.
A great item for your bedstand, because you think about a weather-related emergency in the middle of the night.
Right.
How are you going to know?
Right.
You know, so this is a great tool. I think yours is a neat
What's
item.
wonderful about it is that it has the flashlight, emergency light. In addition, it has the thing for the iPhone. You know, if you have a phone and it charges it, and it's an amazing little unit. And the Red Cross puts it out, and it's very efficient. But let's look more at some of these other wonderful things that you have. You have some flashlights.
Flashlights. So, you think about lighting. Flashlight is certainly one of the items that you should have for at least every member of the family when
in the
there's
home.
an emergency.
Absolutely.
And lighting is not just, flashlights. There's a number of other mechanisms that you can use within your home to ensure that you keep lighting and aren't going to trip over something when the power's out. So flashlights are pretty good. You brought a pretty neat flashlight here. I think yours is even fancier than mine. Tell us about this flashlight.
This is an amazing one. A very dear friend gave this to me. It was one of the best gifts they ever gave, and that was for this. They told me, Yvonne, I want you to use this in your car. And put it, in the car it has that little thing right by the door. You can put that in that pocket there. And they said in an emergency, first of all, it brights up really bright, and it really shines up. But they also said, if anybody ever came up to you in the car, when the car is locked, let's say you're not sure and they're coming up, you've got the ability to shine the light to see. But if anything ever happened in an emergency where you needed to protect yourself, you swap that baby.
That's a
it's
heavy
dark,
flashlight.
nobody sees it, and boom, it will protect you. So it was a great, a very kind and wonderful gift that I have one at home and one at the other. The other thing I do at home is I have lanterns, one in the bedroom, one in each bedroom, so that if the children, anything ever happened, and a flashlight usually that's
Something
near
similar
their
to this?
bedstand, that they could use so that they know where it is in an emergency. So if they ever got out of bed and they didn't know, disoriented and there weren't lights, you can get these little ones that they can be by the bedside, and they always have the ability to see whatever they need to.
Absolutely. And these are very inexpensive. They're the LED lights.
And they have those little flashlights with LED too.
They are really unbelievable, and they last a long time.
And it really glows the room nicely.
It does a nice job, and we tell people this is really what you want for lighting within the home.
You do.
During a power outage. You brought this today, and you scared me to death. I said, a candle. We talk during an emergency management. We talk about candles being a really bad thing for disasters, and the reason for that is candles are the #1 cause of fire after a disaster, and it's for a number of reasons. You think about power outages, people put candles all over the place in the house rather than just one, maybe on the kitchen counter or something like that, because they're trying to light the whole house. Now you've increased the chances that the cat's going to knock it over, the kid's going to knock it over, it just falls somewhere. But you've got a really neat, you fooled me here, so show us this.
In our household, as well as in my office, I never use real candles anymore. What I use is battery-operated candles.
Yeah,
So there you go. It fooled Justin, but a battery-operated candle works great.
Yeah.
You can put it in certain locations, and you can find out where you need to go, and it's safe, and it still gives you the ambiance if you want that also.
Yeah.
And this
during
is
a disaster, you might need it.
During disaster, you need it, and this is the perfect time of year to purchase these. Because of the holiday season, they sell more of these than they ever do any time of year. So it's a great time now to go out, and you usually can get a very good deal on these.
Great.
So let's go back into your bag of tricks here on tools. Oh, duct tape.
Duct tape.
Who could be without duct tape? This is one of the most important things that people need. I remember you saying,
duct tape is one of those things where it will fix literally anything that breaks during an emergency. And so duct tape is definitely a recommendation, not only for the kit that's within your home, but also any sort of kit that you take with you traveling. Having duct tape in the car, another great thing. And I brought, I get the super extra size duct tape, but there's certainly smaller rounds than that.
All right, let's look back more in the, oh my, look at this.
So what this is actually a kind of a fancier style wrench, but what this is a non-sparking gas wrench to shut off the gas to the home. And so during an earthquake, it's very possible that you may have some sort of a gas leak just within your home. And we tell people, we don't want people to just randomly shut off their gas to the home. There's really only 3 circumstances that they would do that with the gas meter outside of their house. 1, they see the dials on the gas meter spinning rapidly. That means it's using much more than it really needs to.
Okay.
Number 2, they smell gas. They smell that raw egg odor.
Yeah.
Or number 3, they hear hissing. They hear that sound of gas escaping from some sort of a leak within the home.
So what do they need to do?
So essentially what this does is this little connection here on the wrench allows them to put that onto the gas wrench, and then they can turn it 90 degrees and essentially will shut off the gas into the home. Still won't do anything to the outside. The big thing that we tell people is never turn your gas back on. Only a trained professional from the gas company can turn it back on. But this is the mechanism to shut it off at the house in the event that there was a gas leak within your home.
And what is this mechanism called, and how can people get it?
So like I said, this is a non-sparking gas wrench. You can find it online. You can find it at a hardware store. And the reason they promote the idea behind non-sparking is because in the event of a flammable gas leak, you don't want to create that spark.
All right, then. So now let's look further here. This looks like
a GPS. And so, this is one of those things where probably a long time ago, this would have been a really neat item. But now, with our phones having GPS built in, you see much less and less of this. One of the things, though, we tell people is if you're going to use your phone as that all tool for GPS and everything else, you need to have extra batteries. Those neat little small battery devices you can get now for probably $10 that will now plug right into your phone, and you can use that to extend the battery life of that device. And you can find those
things called?
They're just battery chargers for phones.
Okay.
And you can find them. I'll tell you, you go to the grocery store, you go to pretty much any store, as you go to the checkout, there's normally about 20 different versions of them right there at the checkout lane. Battery-powered chargers for phones.
Okay, let's swap. Notebook.
A notebook, and so this is a neat one because it actually is called Write in the Rain. So what it does is you can actually use this if you're out in the middle of a weather event. You can actually write on this and it'll still work.
Do you need a particular pen to do?
Nope, you use it on a regular
and it will
pen,
keep it, and it won't
keep
blur
it. Yep,
that's terrific.
And this one's a neat one because it actually has information about first aid and search and rescue and those kinds of items.
And that's called?
This is just Write in the Rain notebook, and you can get it in all different versions. This one is specific for our community emergency response team, which is that volunteer group that we have in the city. We train residents on a quarterly basis in Nashua on how to be better prepared for different types of emergencies.
Do you have one coming up?
We actually do have one coming up. It's Martin Luther King weekend in January.
In January?
I believe it's the 15th through the 17th.
And if somebody was interested in getting involved, how might they do that?
The best way for folks to sign up for our next community emergency response team training is through nashuanh.gov/CERT, C-E-R-T.
Okay. All right then. So what are these?
So these are actually those little snap glow sticks, and these are actually, they'll provide limited lighting, if you needed it, but they're really meant to just hang on yourself so that if you're out walking around, you've got your reflective vest, people can see you. We in the search and rescue field, we actually use these. We'll put them on all of our devices, so that way if we're in the middle of the night and we're trying to find our helmet or whatever we're trying to find, we can at least see it with one of these little glow sticks. And these are very inexpensive. You can get a whole box of them real cheap.
Now, I've noticed people also having those things with the lights right here.
Oh, yeah, on their helmets?
Yeah.
Yep, so certainly if you have some sort of a hard hat, a helmet, having that little flashlight.
But even without it, you can put it over your hat if you needed it right there.
Absolutely.
And this here?
This is actually probably one of the better versions of those battery chargers for your phone. So this one actually is not only just a normal charger for the phone, but this is also a crank type. So you can basically recharge it as you're using it if you needed to. A lot of the ones that you see, those more inexpensive ones, they're just the battery chargers. You have to regularly go back and plug them into the wall so that they'll charge back up.
So you just hook your phone in there and you...
Yep, and you can just keep charging it right up.
Keep going.
Yeah, it's pretty
Exercise
neat.
the hand.
Yeah, I know it will. You have to make sure you have your granola bars before.
That's right.
So.
And this?
This is just a knife, and so there's all different types of knives that you can get for an emergency. But you really think about it, during an emergency, there's a number of circumstances that you could use this. You need to open up food supplies, you need to cut rope, tape, any of that kind of stuff. This is just a real cheap one. You can find this at any hardware store, but certainly we recommend going out and getting the multi-tools, and that way you've got multiple tools on one knife that you can use for whatever the case might be.
And you see that a lot now during the holidays. They have it sometimes at the checkout counters for people to get.
Yes, absolutely.
And then, of course, there's an old Swiss Army knife, right?
Swiss Army knife, you
yeah,
cannot beat that.
I have mine back from Girl Scout days.
You can't beat that.
It's got everything you need on it. So, and this here.
This is just a small toolkit, so we recommend that in an emergency kit you have a small toolkit, and a lot of folks, once again, they say, oh, well, I've got a toolkit at home, but are the folks that need to get into that emergency supply kit going to know where your multi-purpose screwdriver is and all that kind of stuff. So this is just a cheap one. You can find this at any hardware store as well. It has just a couple of the tools that you might need during an emergency.
Okay. And in here, of course, you have some more light sticks, and you have something heavy here. And
that's another neat version of a sort of a wrench.
Okay.
And this is actually as we mentioned earlier, this is the item that you would put on the gas meter to shut it off.
Okay.
This little sharp spike here is meant to be able to break tempered glass. And so this is something you can put in a car. And then you've got good cutters up here, but also a wrench head as well. So you see in the preparedness field, you'll see a lot of these multi-tools where you certainly have got compact situations.
Of
you want to
course,
have
somebody gets stuck in a car, you have to break the glass.
You've got as many things as
else.
possible.
My goodness, you are very prepared. And this here.
So this is another version of a kind of a lighting source. These are flares, signal flares, and so you can use these. A lot of times you'll see these used for camping and hiking and those kinds of things, but certainly this would be great for your car emergency supply kit. If you find yourself in a situation where you need to signify where you are, this would be another great circumstance. It also makes sure that people that are traveling on the roadway can see you.
Okay, and this I think is another important one.
Oh, this is a critical one. Having a whistle is really important as part of your go bag. And the reason for this, people say, oh, I can yell loud. Well, after yelling for an extended period of time, you lose that ability with your vocal cords to be able to get out there and make that noise. Whistling is probably one of the only ways after a significant amount of time that you're going to be able to call for help if you need it.
And it's said to whistle in 3 distinct components. Is that still the case? Or 1, 2, 3 to show that there's an emergency?
And so, certainly by the time you're trying to get help from folks, you're probably going to be whistling all different ways.
Is this anything?
Yeah, so this is actually a waterproof version of a match holder. And you see it's got a little gasket there to keep water out, but you can put matches in there if you needed them.
Do you recommend matches, or what is the alternative?
Probably for one of those circumstances where you're out camping or hiking or those kinds of things, but for the average household owner, probably not.
Okay, so let's try to move along here.
Yep.
Let's go to first aid kit, because we've gone from toolbox to first aid kit. Now, basically, you have in here a basic first aid kit.
So actually in here, I've got a couple different versions of first aid kits, because I like to show people how you can range. A lot of people think of a first aid kit, that cheap little tiny thing that you can get for free at a work party or wherever. That's not going to be very helpful. That's just a couple of Band-Aids.
Okay.
When you're thinking about a first aid kit, we really want to have something with some good medical supplies in it, particularly things that you can use to stop significant bleeding. So this is kind of one of the lower range models. This is just, like I said, Band-Aids, those kinds of items. You'll see they get a little bit better as you go along. Now, this is more of a camping style. It's got some trauma dressings and that kind of stuff in it. Same type here, small bags you can have for traveling and that kind of stuff.
And then, of course, you have hand warmers in here and foot warmers.
Yes, which are
really
critical
important.
during the winter.
They really
absolutely
are. And, of course, a scissor.
Yeah, trauma shears. So the nice thing about trauma shears are essentially they're used to be able to get that clothing or fabric off of a person who had some sort of an injury, but we don't want to cut them as we're trying to cut the stuff off. So trauma shears are designed to prevent people from getting cut as you're trying to cut the clothes off.
Well, let's move to food now. Let's move to the importance of food that you should have as backup within your home.
So for food, I always tell folks that it's a range. You can have very basic foods that you put as part of your emergency supply kit, all the way ranging from very fancy types that you can use for camping and that kind of stuff. So this is a bag of the more standard items.
Mixed nuts.
Yeah, non-perishable foods are the items.
Noodle soup.
Things that you can eat without having to cook them.
Tuna fish.
There you go. That's delicious.
Some
Granola energy
bars.
They're a great option, and they keep you energized.
Like
another granola bar type.
Granola bar.
And these are things that really you can buy.
Canned soups.
You can buy those anywhere. The key, though, is if you do get the canned goods, what do you have to have with a canned good?
An
old style
yes, and a lot of people don't have that, so that's an imperative tool, I would say,
you know,
for the home.
a lot of times they just have the one that's mounted underneath their cabinets. It's a
Yes.
power mounted. When the power goes out,
Sure.
they're in trouble. So
Okay.
it's definitely good. So those are the more basic food items.
All right. So water is another issue.
Yes, water is. And
So as far as water, having it at home and having a backup supply, you usually have a method of how much water do you need per person in the home?
So for our rule of thumb, we tell people 1 gallon per person per day.
Okay.
And that's not just for drinking. People say, I don't drink a gallon of water per person per day as it stands right now. It's for sanitation, it's for cleaning yourself, it's for using for cooking, all those items. So
Okay.
that's where that 1 gallon per person per day rule of thumb comes from.
Okay.
But you brought up that great
That
bottle.
tool, yeah.
That is something that's meant to fill up. You can use that to, you know there's some sort of an emergency about to happen.
Yes.
Hurricane, winter storm,
Sure.
something like that. This would be something you could fill up with clean, fresh water.
And it's PPA free.
That's right.
And that's, again, something you can get at the Harvard.
Absolutely. Some other things for water, though,
Yes.
we tell people that having, just cases of bottled water is probably the easiest way to store water. I really recommend it. Now, one of the things that people need to pay attention to, there is a little expiration date on bottled water. And they say, what is that for? Well, it's actually really the plastic is not the water itself. So that's the reason they put an expiration date on there.
Isn't that interesting?
So we tell people bottled water is a great way to store water because you can just cycle through it like normal. So get a case of water, cycle through it, and just have an extra case there so that when you need it during an emergency.
But if it's reached the expiration date, does that mean it's not safe for a person to drink because of the plastic?
I would say it's probably okay. If it's an emergency, I would probably drink it.
All right, then.
Now, this is a even more kind of professional version of
Of the
emergency
water.
preparedness, and that's vacuum sealed inside of just a bag.
Okay.
That lasts even longer than bottled water.
All right, so water is important, and again, how much water per person should you plan
1
on?
gallon per person per day.
Okay. And then, of course, there's the standard of having paper towels,
Yep.
toilet paper, extra bags.
Yep.
And what's this baby?
So this is actually a neat tool that we got from a camping store, and this is just a camping kitchen set. And so, if you had in a go kit to be able to, just eat normal food and things
Right.
like that, it's got the typical all size fits all fork,
that,
spoon,
fork,
knife,
spoon,
and the
yeah.
whole thing.
In the unit.
And then, certainly a little plate and that kind of stuff as
Very
well.
good. And of course, you have the can opener here and another type.
And another type of knife, yep. So
Very good.
All great items that would be for eating, that kind of stuff.
Yep. And then, of course, you have cleaning items, toilet paper and
Yes, this is
sanitation items.
This is a critical part of any emergency kit, but particularly for your go kit. So if you had to evacuate from your home,
Okay.
you want to have some really critical items, including the shampoo, toothpaste, toothbrush, all the items that you use. It's
All the
part
time.
of that everyday routine.
Okay.
Well, you can't just forget about that during an emergency. So
No.
having these items as part of your
Travel
go
kit,
kit as
cleaning
well.
supplies.
And one of the things that you'll be talking
bug
about a little bit
spray.
later is medications.
We will be, and talking about the most important things in medications to make sure that you have. So again, the toothbrush, the supplies that you need, travel kit, and all of that. And so over here, of course, you have extra clothes.
Extra clothes, and
Hats,
we talk about
gloves.
sturdy clothes and clothes particular for the climate. So,
Yes.
certainly in the Northeast here,
Correct.
in the middle of the winter, you want to have gloves, nice woolen hat, things that are going to keep you warm in the event of some sort of an emergency.
And then, of course, you have heat meals, going back to the food. Of
That
things
goes
that
to
you
the
can get.
other side of the spectrum. So you can go to the basics and get canned goods and things like that. These are neat items because heater meals, and there's a bunch of different brands of this, they actually will have a chemical reaction. You put your food into a little pouch, and it'll make it warm just as if you were using a stove. This is the
Really?
military version. It's called MRE's, Meals Ready to Eat.
Yeah.
So this is the civilian version and the military
And
version.
healthy, good food for you.
It's,
Keeps you
well, I
alive
don't
and
know.
well.
I don't know about healthy,
Okay.
but
Okay, so food, of course, coffee you have in here, and tea and other things that you need
Yep.
to just make sure that you have things that you need. Now, over here we have again the home radio, and then
I have
games. Games
yeah.
are really important when you are stuck in a house and there's
Without
an
the
emergency
power,
without the
without
power.
the
It's a time
TV.
for having fun with family and putting that battery-operated candle or a few in the middle,
Yeah.
and being able to have some games and fun. And that other thing is another
Another
radio.
no weather radio, and we have another version here, which is kind of a desk mount type that you can put next to the bed. So there's so many different versions of it out there.
And of course, you have a fire.
Fire extinguisher.
A fire
yes.
extinguisher.
And so certainly that's probably not going to be part of your emergency supply kit, but we always like to mention it because it really is a part
of
of
the
being
home.
emergency preparedness within the home.
Absolutely.
So we recommend what we call an ABC fire extinguisher. An ABC fire extinguisher means that it will put out ordinary combustibles, it will put out flammable goods, and it will also put out electrical fires, ABC. So,
Very good.
Highly
And
recommended.
in a home, should we not have one of those on each level of the home and
At
nearby
least.
and know how to do it and check? What is the recommendation of how many fire extinguishers you should have?
So at least one per floor,
Okay.
and we also recommend that you have one in the kitchen and any
Yes.
other place where there might be flammable, maybe the garage, those kinds of locations.
I notice you also have a hose.
Yeah, so this is actually
And
an
it's a white
interesting
one at
tool.
that.
So yeah, so this is kind of goes back to the water situation. So
Mm-hmm.
in the event you have a hot water heater at your home,
Mm-hmm.
there is a ton of potable water that you can drink within that hot water heater. It's just trying to get it out. So one of the things that you can do is get a hose. This has the standard hose fittings on it. You can get a green type too, but this is a food grade hose, so
Really?
it will taste a little bit better as it goes through rather than a
Okay.
normal garden hose.
What a great idea.
But what you do is your hot water heater, make sure that it's turned off
Okay.
and it cools down the water.
Okay.
Down at the bottom of the hot water heater, there's a little spigot.
Okay.
Put a pan down there and let any of the sediments, things to come out for just a couple seconds. Close
Sure.
it back up. Put your hose on, and now you can fill up things like that big water jug that we showed earlier in the show.
That's a great idea. Now, of course, you have batteries.
And having
That's
batteries of
critically
all
important.
types. You've
C,
got
D, A, AA, AAA, the whole business.
any device that
D,
you have, check
make
to
sure
see
you
the
have a
size
backup.
batteries. Exactly.
And batteries have life too, and so you need to make sure that you
They
watch
do.
that they haven't expired. And I notice you have some bleach here.
Yeah, so bleach can be used also along the lines of the water situation. And the purpose of that is if you have water that you feel has not been kept fresh,
Sure.
bleach will allow you, just putting a drop into a quart will ensure that it stays at least sanitized. You can also use it for cleaning, things like that during an emergency. One of the things that we recommend back to the FEMA website,
Yes.
they go on there and they talk about the size water that you would put in bleach and based on a gallon, a quart, a pint, all those things, how many drops of bleach you would put in there. Highly recommend people go there and check
The
out
FEMA
what they would do.
website, again, what is it?
FEMA.gov.
Excellent. And this here?
So that's kind of the type of first aid kit that we would recommend for folks. It's got more trauma dressings, things that will stop bleeding that you can use, direct pressure, maybe a
Okay.
tourniquet, those kinds of things.
Okay, and then you have a blanket here.
Blankets are important here.
Yep.
Having them in
the
your car,
home,
in your
the
home.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So now let's just quickly shift. We've gone through so much, and this has been phenomenal. This is the emergency kit to have in the home,
Absolutely.
and to have it available all the time so that at any type of emergency you have it.
Certainly.
But then, if you ever need to leave the home in an emergency and you're asked to leave, you should also have a kit ready to go in a duffel bag that you can take along with you.
Yep.
And in that kit, you'd have obviously change of clothes. You'd also have a sleeping bag or a sleeping bag for two, or whatever it is, so that you have that, so you have a comfortable place, a pillow.
Absolutely.
And what are the other things that you might bring with you if you had to go to an emergency shelter?
So if you ever had to go to some sort of location as evacuations,
Right.
whether it be a friend or family member outside of the affected area, which is the best case,
Yeah.
or in that worst case scenario where you didn't have a place to go and you had to go to an emergency shelter,
Sure.
you need to have some critical things, including your toiletries, medications, extra pair of glasses, some snacks, bedding, linen, because certainly you can get a cot. However, you need to have all the other items for you to sleep comfortably there. And then, certainly ranging to things to keep you occupied. It might be
Books.
a book, game, something like that.
Absolutely.
The one thing, though, that is most critical about your Go kit versus the one that's in your home
Yes.
is having the important paperwork. So if you needed to evacuate quickly, you need to have copies of insurance paperwork, your birth certificates, any of those critical items that you don't want to lose forever during an emergency. So
That's a good
make sure that
point.
those are part of your Go kit.
Okay, now let's quickly go to the emergency kit for the car, because so many things can happen. You might be at work and you need to try to get home. You might get stuck. You might be trying to go somewhere or whatever else, and you need always to have, or the snow might pile in at one point, or ice so much that you can't go. This is an amazing little kit that you brought.
So this is a neat idea, and this is a kit that you can buy online, or you can buy it at some sort of a camping store or something like that.
Interesting. It's called a Mayday.
Yep, and
Mayday Emergency Survival.
I recommend something of this size for your car kit or your travel kit. And I won't pull all the stuff out of here, but I'll talk about some of the things that would be within it. The first thing that's neat about it is
it's a portable toilet.
It's a portable toilet.
That's amazing.
So this is certainly important if you find
That'd
yourself
give you
stranded.
peace of mind.
Yes.
God forbid, if you had to go, you could go.
You just want to make sure you take all the stuff out of
That's
it
an
first.
important component. This is true. But look at how much you were able to fit in there.
Yeah,
and
and
this kit comes with it all?
It comes with it all. It comes with, the basics that you would need for your car, including, a battery-powered radio,
Yep.
your snacks and food, blanket,
All of
extra
that.
tools.
Wow.
It's all within one
Is it a
toolkit
very
here.
expensive thing for people to
No,
get?
typically you'll find something like this between $100 and $150. And the nice thing about that is because it's all in one kit, you don't have to go around and try and find it everywhere. So
I'm reading here, it just happened to catch my eye. It says children can fall into the bucket and drown.
oh yeah,
Keep children away from bucket with even a small amount of liquid. That's important. Jeez, that's all we need. So you just want to protect it. But what a smart invention.
And this will fit in your trunk. It's actually, for the most part, pretty compact. So
Excellent.
Highly recommended.
So Justin, this has been very informative. So let's tell our community the ways that they can be involved with receiving the code red information from the city of Nashua.
Absolutely. So yeah, we talked about a number of things today, including making an emergency plan,
Exactly.
building an emergency kit,
For
and
the
then
home
and the car,
and to take
and
with
to
you
take
in
with
case you
you.
leave.
And then the final piece is staying informed, because you can't do any of these preparations if you don't know the types of hazards that you might have in the community. So,
Or if you need to leave home, where to go, where
Exactly.
the emergency site is.
So Code Red is a system that we have in the city that is intended to send notifications of an emergency nature to our residents and businesses. And you can sign up for the Code Red system through cell phones, whether it be a text message or a phone call, an old-style landline phone,
Okay.
emails, even on an app that you can install on your Apple or Google Android phone.
How do people do it?
So the best way to do it is to go to the Nashua website, nashuanh.gov/code red.
Okay.
And on that website, you'll actually have the full registration. You can register a work address, a home address, whatever you want,
Okay.
and then put that information in. And so then when there's an emergency, public safety officials can send you that notification as soon as it comes out and make sure that you're informed of what to do in that emergency.
So that would be a good thing for all family members to have.
Absolutely. Every
Excellent.
phone.
What other things can they contact your office for emergency for?
So there are a
You have
number.
operations, right?
Yep. So there are a number of other things that people can do to get information during a disaster. One is our emergency information line that we activate during some sort of a storm or other event, and that phone number is 603-589-3456.
603
589-3456.
Okay.
And the point of that phone number is we activate that during some sort of a storm for our emergency operations center. And that basically serves as kind of the nerve center of all of our operations during a disaster. And the idea behind that is if they have some sort of a non-emergency related situation, something they wouldn't call 911 for,
Sure.
but it might be a tree down in the middle of the roadway, or they need additional assistance to get to a location,
Yes.
that kind of stuff. Call that number, and it's really important that people understand that it's only activated during a major emergency.
Now, Justin, if anybody ever saw anything that was suspicious or not sure in another type of emergency, I mean, obviously our country is right now going through, as all the world, that things are going on where we may not be as secure or maybe a little more vulnerable, but we
Certainly.
want to stay calm. If somebody were to see something that was unusual, what would you advise them to do?
So one of the things that we've been promoting recently, actually even before kind of the recent events have happened, we've been promoting a concept called See Something, Say Something.
Okay.
And See Something, Say Something is really built upon if you're out in the community and you see something that just doesn't seem right, seems to be a bit suspicious, or you feel that it's a dangerous situation, make sure that you report that to your local authorities. And for that, it would be our local police department.
Who would they call? 911, or who do they call?
So our recommendation, if you see something that's really, at this time, extremely dangerous, call 911.
Or something suspicious that might be a bag just being situated on the side of a
Absolutely.
road or in the mall or somewhere unusual, or just something that doesn't seem right.
Something that doesn't seem
Or
right.
somebody that might look suspicious.
Maybe they're near some sort of important location, maybe an important government facility.
Exactly.
And they just aren't doing the things that a normal person would be doing in that situation.
So is there a particular number people should call?
So if it's a critical emergency and something's about to happen bad, right then 911.
Okay.
Another thing that they can do is call the non-emergency line at the police department.
Okay.
And that is 594
594
3500.
3500. Justin, this has been an amazingly important and informative session here, and I greatly appreciate all the work that you do, all the work that your colleagues do with you, and
Thank
all
you.
of the community that supports you. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a quick little break because we're going to follow up with Dr. Margarita Ochemaya, where we're going to talk about emergencies and medical information that you need and should have by you related to medications and other supplies. We'll be right back.
Disasters can happen anywhere at any time. When disaster hits home, your family will depend on you. In a disaster, you are the superhero. Be prepared. Sign up for emergency alerts and visit readynh.gov. Take action. Be safe.
It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
Welcome back. With me right now is Margarita Ochemaya, a wonderful doctor who's going to provide you information about what to do in case of an emergency related to your medical needs. But before we jump into that, we want to let you know that there's this wonderful item that you can purchase called Life in a Case. And this is a perfect way for you to include your personal, financial, property, medical, and estate information and have it ready to go with you in your bag that you have for an emergency to take with you. Dr. Ochemaya, talk about, from a medical point of view, the most important things that people can do related to their go kits, things to have at home.
I first want to thank Justin for having given us an amazing prelude and important presentation. But most importantly, we'll start with a disaster plan. And this is a little review of what Justin said already, but family communication, very importantly, not always are we together when a disaster strikes. So we should actually have a pre-planned way in which the family will communicate. And it's very important to know not only every member, but also our animal companions and our pets. So where we want to know is where are their whereabouts and how are you going to be constantly communicating about your well-being.
And make sure you prepare a package for your pets, for food and water and things that they need.
And their medical needs as well.
Exactly.
You want to also plan as how a family you will be communicating. As you will know, if it's a disaster, telephone landlines might be down, cell phones, are you going to use texts, are you going to use computers, are you going to use the radio, select the radio station that you will be using, television and newsprint. But most importantly, you should identify a meeting place.
Exactly.
If it's going to be at a different location than it is in your home. And it's very important to understand the ways you can exit your home. So there are some rollaway ladders that for second floor situations, you can actually hook from your window and then exit the home. Then in terms of preparing your to-go kit, as we just discussed, and amazing ways to prepare them, but most importantly, the medical to-go kit. So What you want to know is, since not always are we having the disaster, you want to always make sure you continuously, routinely monitor your preparedness kit to make sure if there will be medications inside, the expiration dates of everything that might expire. Access to the kit is imperative. You want to know where it is, because when you are under an emergency situation, you might not remember, your faculties might be just to run and dash, so that access is very important. Now, specifically with regards to emergency preparedness for prescription medications, it's very important to consider the fact that some people have chronic medical illness that require constant medications, and not having those medications can create withdrawals and or certain circumstances that are related to each medical condition. But these are the necessary consideration. Number one, stockpile your medications. It's very important to have at least 7 to 10 days. In my practice, I often see that they have the last pill and then they need a refill, and they need a refill ASAP. Well, in the case of a disaster, likely reaching your doctor or the pharmacy might not be easy. So it's very important to refill your medication at the earliest time allowed by your insurance, so over time you can have an emergency supply. Again, I think 7 to 10 days of your prescription medication should be something you have in your mind. Secondly, how to keep a list of all your medications. We usually don't have a card where we have, our name, our emergency contacts, our medical conditions, and the list of the medications that we are taking. It's very important to include the name, the dosage, maybe even the doctor who prescribed it, as well as the pharmacy where you pick it from. Also very importantly is when you have a controlled substance. That is also very important, because yet again, that can be very critical. And not only should you have your stockpile of that, but also a proof of your prescription. Because in case you can't reach your doctor, that proof of that prescription will be imperative. I also think that you should always keep your prescription medication coverage and your insurance coverage card or a photocopy in your kit. Because in case of an emergency, how will you be able to prove your insurance? And the cost of these medications can be pretty hefty. Lastly, I think it's very important to keep all your medications together in a box that would be waterproof, and again, in your disaster plan in an easy access. But also consider preparing for your special needs. Because, for example, if your medication requires refrigeration, as an example, insulin. Insulin is a life necessity. You need insulin when you're a type 1 patient, and therefore those might need refrigeration. But it's important to know that insulin can last up to 30 days outside the refrigerator. If you have an electronic equipment that requires electricity, you might want to think about what would be your backup in terms of how you're going to power up. These examples are oxygen concentrators or sleep apnea machines. And lastly, back to kind of in the diabetes situation, or machines like hearing aids or your glucometer, they need batteries. So then again, you might have a separate stockpile of your batteries with these equipments. And lastly, you want to make sure you have a non-prescription medication kit. Very importantly to consider would be pain relievers, cold medications, allergy medications, insect bite medications, and also maybe instant ice and hot pads. But also very importantly, consider the location of where you live. If you're going to be in a boating emergency, you need water-related emergency situations. If you're going to be in the mountains, very important to understand ticks and tick prevention and things like that. If you are actually in the ocean, you want to also relate to what are the emergencies related to the ocean. And lastly, I want to emphasize the importance of keeping a check on your prescriptions so that they don't expire. And if there is a water emergency, want to make sure that you look at your medication, make sure it doesn't smell bad, that it's not disintegrating, or it doesn't appear like it's probably not useful.
How about like if someone needed an inhaler, do they need to get extra ones of those if they need it for their lungs and passages, or if they have allergic reaction like Benadryl, to also have that in that
Thank
kit?
you. Very importantly, those are specific to each medical needs. But number one, for a diabetic, you want to have insulin, but also glucagon. Glucagon can take care of a person when they are very hypoglycemic. If you have a severe allergy, like a peanut allergy, you want to make sure you have your EpiPen.
Exactly.
EpiPen, and again, very importantly, checking the expiration dates. If you have Addison's disease, which is a condition in which your adrenals don't produce cortisol, you want to make sure you have your emergency hydrocortisone. And so, yes, very importantly, like inhalers in that matter, usually people have them close to them anyway, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a separate, yes, absolutely.
Now, from a first aid kit point of view, what are the most important things in addition to the medication that you believe people should have? I know you mentioned some medications, but God forbid if they got cut, as they're trying to get out of their home or doing whatever they need to, what would be the things that would be most important from your perspective to have?
So very importantly, the big one is the ABCs: airways, bleeding, and circulation. And so to some degree, a good card on CPR, and if you are in an environment where you have an ill parent or an ill sister or brother, it wouldn't be a bad idea to get CPR certified. But A as in airway, so maintaining a person's airway, how will you do that? There is a cannula that you could have. B is blood, so a tourniquet, to make sure if somebody's bleeding, you can find ways in which you can stop the bleeding, tourniquet, gauzes, and things like that. And as we mentioned earlier, some emergency kits have small Band-Aids, but we're talking, severe bleeding while the emergency assistance team can come.
Yes.
And then lastly, I think very importantly would be back to the prescriptions.
Okay, and I think it's very important to remind people, always in an emergency, the key is to stay calm.
Yes.
Not to react to the situation, but to respond calmly. And to realize by taking the precautions that we've discussed in this program, by preparing an emergency kit within the home, by preparing your to-go kit to go with you if you need to leave the home, and also by preparing an automobile kit, that you are all set. So you have the peace of mind of knowing you have done what you've needed to be able to do so that you are prepared.
On that note, like when, for those that have flown in airplanes, it's always very important to put your oxygen mask first and then somebody else's. So like you said, breathing, exercising, finding ways in which you can stay calm and find ways in which you can avoid, I'll use the word freaking out, because sometimes you get paralyzed and have no idea what to do. So I would actually even emphasize doing drills at home, where you could actually have this communication plan as a family. Because as a parent, for example, and my daughter's at school, maybe I need to make sure I have a plan to communicate with the school.
Absolutely.
Again, if you have a chronic illness that has a life-threatening situation in case you would not have access to medications, it is really very important to discuss with your doctor in one of those visits in which you say, well, doctor, what do you think I should do in case of an emergency?
Very good. And also preparation and communication if you have a parent that it was working, so that you have that established contact information for a child or another person to be able to contact you. Now, I know it's not a medication, but I know sometimes if we get thirsty, of course, Justin talked about the importance of water in the home and having enough water within the home, also related to in the car. But another good thing to be able to have, although it's not a medication, but if you need to quench your, saliva and everything else, is sometimes to have throat lozenges.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
are very helpful. And also if people have cough problems or whatever else, they may need some cough drops or something like that. Is there anything else, as we summarize the importance of what people need from a medical point of view, that you would like to tell our audience?
The most important part is, one is the first phase of emergency reaction is the emergency has happened and now you have to either go away or use your kit. The second one is how you will continue to prepare over the ensuing hours or maybe even days. And that includes making sure that if you do have equipment that you need, you have those in your emergency kit. It's very hard to have 2 sleep apnea machines. It's kind of easy to maybe have 2 glucometers, but it is a little complex, and making a good list and doing those drills at home, I think, are very important. And having this conversation, given that we are in those times, I think it's very important to keep it in a calm, matter-of-fact way, that we just want to be prepared and have a plan. Maybe a little card in your wallet and the children's wallets would be a good idea.
I think that's a great idea. I know I do that for myself. I have a little card, and I know people sometimes put notes on their little iPads or whatever, or iPhones, but sometimes remember to have that battery backup for it in case you need it. But have it available so that in different places, card, on your phone, on your iPad, so just in case you've got a backup.
And again, a medical ID bracelet.
Medical ID bracelet is
very,
important.
very important.
And remember your primary information, your doctor's name, phone numbers, emergency numbers. You've gotten a lot of information today, and I wish you to really go through it and develop an emergency plan with your family. Be well, healthy, and happy, and take care.
Thank you.
The